What's going on, everybody? How we doing? Let's see. Make sure everything's working. We got Rob, Sergio, Mr. Mike.
Live, guys.
All right. What's going on, everybody? Perfect. Good
Good
deal.
evening, everybody. How are you doing?
All right. Let's make sure we got the stream working. Okay. Looks like we're live. Sweet. Perfect. What's going on, everybody? So tonight's broadcast, we got none other than Shannon Poe from A.M.R.A. If you want to say hello.
Hey, guys.
Hello,
Thanks
everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's good to have you. Let's go ahead and start off by explaining to everybody what you do over there at A.M.R.A, brother.
Well, I'm the founder of A.M.R.A and president, which means I'm basically a janitor. But you know what A.M.R.A is we're a nonprofit that our primary goal is to educate the miners, small-scale miners, really on what their rights are as it refers to public lands, which is where we all mine. In a nutshell, that's really what it is. But it was spawned out of frustration. In the mid-2000s, I was dredging and making quite a bit of money dredging. And in 2009 here in California, the Democrats passed a moratorium saying that we kill salmon, and you know they needed to stop all this activity until they could do a study and find out how many salmon we kill. And I'm sitting in a river that doesn't have salmon. There's a dam. There's no fish ladders. And it just didn't make any sense to me. And so I started chucking my own money at different groups saying, you know, get me in the water, sue somebody, you know, beat the shit out of somebody, whatever, get me back in the water. And that didn't really happen, although a lot of groups did try. And so it was a never-ending quest of, well, what are my rights here? And you really couldn't find any resources that told you that. At least there wasn't really anybody taking a lead on explaining that to the people. And so that's really what started with A.M.R.A back in 2012. And we didn't want to just have a nonprofit that begs for money to be able to get the message out and do these things and push back against the Forest Service, BLM, EPA, or whoever. So, you know, took about 6 months for me sitting around thinking of, well, heck, you know, we can't really do this just on a nonprofit that doesn't give anything back tangible. So at the time I had 9 mining claims, good claims, really good claims. And I donated access of 7 of my mining claims to A.M.R.A for anybody that would join. $200, tax deductible, unlimited amount of mining you can do on the claims. You keep all the gold. And that's really what started it. And we went from 7 claims the first year to about 15, then it was 20, and then it was 40, and here we are, you know, 8.5 years later, and we've got 85 claims in 7 states, and they're all really good claims. And so, you know, that's kind of where we're at today. So that helps fund us to be able to do things, and you know, and it gives something that people can actually use, and that is the mining claim. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do.
No, that's awesome, man. I wanted to kind of get into more in depth with the crap that's been going on recently with the road closures, you know, BLM kind of, you know, jerking people around, stuff like that. I'm sure you've had quite a bit of people come over to you, contact you, you know, say, hey, can you help me in this situation or that situation? Have you seen that kind of activity increase in the last few years, especially with what's going on? Or
we did. You know, it wasn't in the beginning, you know, and I mean beginning is the beginning of A.M.R.A. So 2013, 14, obviously Obama was in office, and you really started to see a culture change within the Forest Service and the BLM, where these people coming out of their academies and being taught this stuff, and the indoctrination colleges, because most colleges now kind of indoctrinate people into the liberal ideology, is you started to see that where they just didn't want you on their public lands, what they would call their public lands. And it's progressively gotten worse. Now, under the Trump administration, it eased back a little bit in about his 2nd or 3rd year. And it really eased back a lot in his last year. And now with this new administration in office, we've seen a dramatic increase in that. You know, and the thing that people don't understand, I think, about these different management agencies, whether it be BLM or Forest Service or a regulatory agency like the EPA, once a president comes into office, they have the ability to go out and basically wipe the board of the people that run these agencies and put people in there and change, you know, basically the culture within. And that's happened. The problem is you have all of these lower people in these positions, whether it be a district ranger or a geologist or a supervisor, that they don't get rid of those people per se at the presidential level. And so they're still there. The ideology is still there. And then it just comes back twice as bad, you know, when they change to a different political ideology at the presidency. So, you know, it used to be honest, guys, we would get maybe one call or email about that a week, you know, maybe a few years ago. And now we probably get 2 or 3 a week. Or like in James' case, I actually read about his issue on Facebook. So there's a lot more going on, you know, and it's part of a larger agenda. And I know there's probably people watching this right now nodding their head going, yeah, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. And that is exactly what it is one side of the political spectrum just fundamentally doesn't believe in public lands. They don't believe that you should be able to go out and actually file a mining claim, which is recognized as real property, that gives you fundamentally granted rights. They just vehemently oppose that. And I'll give you a really good example of that. So about 5 years ago, we had a claim, it literally is about 1.5 miles from my shop, and called Ratchilla. And we had a military veteran, retired military veteran, in the creek sitting in there panning for gold on our mining claim, which when you become a member of A.M.R.A, you actually become an owner and you're granted the same rights as the person's name who actually is on the claim paperwork. And that's recognized, you know, nobody disputes that, not even the Forest Service. But anyway, this was on Forest Service managed land, and we try to encourage people not to call it BLM land or USFS land, because it ain't theirs, it's ours.
Right.
They manage it for it. So anyway, so this guy's sitting in a creek. There's another decorated military veteran out of the Vietnam War. Guy got the crap shot out of him, and he truly is a hero, with his wife, who is in her mid-60s, and they were panning just upstream from where Rick was. So 2 Forest Service, very young, in their early 20s. One of them is already a captain, a female. Drive by on the road, they see the guy's trucks up there, so they walk down to the creek and come stomping up the creek, you know, all loaded to the gills with their batons and tasers and guns and everything, you know, like they're on some kind of SWAT raid. Right. And without saying hello, and they actually parked right underneath our mining claim sign. So without saying hello, how you doing, or anything like that, the very first words out of the female's mouth was, all right, everybody, pull out their ID. I need to know who's in my forest. That's the exact words that they used. And so Rick, the guy I'm going to kind of highlight here, said, you know, I'm on my mining claim and you're I'm in the middle of a mining operation. You don't have any right to interfere with this. And he was correct. And so she's like, well, give me your effing ID. And he says, look, lady, there's a thing called the 4th Amendment, and I don't have to show any ID to you whatsoever. I'm not doing anything wrong. I park legally. I'm not a wanted man. I'm not doing anything. You have no probable cause. And so she screams up at the husband and wife team and says, give me your ID. So the lady pulls out, our member pulls out her ID card that we give everybody at A.M.R.A. It's an ID card, and it's got an expiration date in their name and our logo. And she hands that, because she's like, I'm in a creek. I'm not carrying my purse down here. So the female LEO reads this card and says, well, this thing's expired. Are you even allowed to mine here? Well, it's not the Forest Service responsibility to enforce who mines on whose claims.
Right.
And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, I have, this is the expired card. I have the new card in my truck. You know, they just sent it to me because we renewed that. So the gal goes, okay, I'm going to escort you to your vehicle. Keep your hands in plain sight the whole time, out to your side, and let's walk to your vehicle and let's get your ID card for Amra. So they literally, this lady hikes back up the frickin' hill all the way to the truck, gets the ID, shows it to her. She's satisfied now that she's actually an A.M.R.A member, which makes no sense whatsoever. They walk back down to the creek. Rick's still sitting there. The other male LEO has still been standing there, you know, all ready to pull his frickin' weapon, you know, for whatever reason. So she again focuses her attention on Rick, who's literally sitting in the water with his feet in the water and the pan in his hand. And she's like, I'm going to ask you again, give me your ID. And he's like, call the sheriff. And she's like, I'm not going to call the sheriff. So he's like, well, I'm not going to give you my ID because you have absolutely no authority on this property, nor to ask me for ID. So she did the unthinkable, and she pulled the taser off of her hip, and she put it right up against his forehead and said, you're going to give me your effing ID right now.
Wow.
True story. Wow. So we filed suit. Obviously, I mean, it's an atrocious thing. But that goes to show, and obviously they settled that case as quick as they could, but it just goes to show that ideology exists out there. Now, not all the Forest Service and not all the BLM people are that way. They're not. There's some really good folks out there, and especially with the firefighters. We have a very close relationship with a lot of those guys. And we've got really good district rangers that we work with on plan of operations and, you know, outings and events and things like that. As a matter of fact, they by the way, funny story is, so we have a claim where we do a lot of our outings. It's actually about 5 claims combined in a big campground up there. Right after we filed suit, they went and built us a beautifully nice cement bathroom there on our mining claim.
That's awesome.
That's kind of cool. But so I don't want to label all of them as bad people because they're really not. But, you know, there's a significant percentage that are. There's a lot of them in Idaho. And, you know, it's kind of ironic is if we could actually poll the people watching this and have them guess which state we have the most problems with, I'll bet you they wouldn't guess it. No, it's absolutely not Idaho. Take a guess, guys. I'll give you each of you 3 guesses. How's that?
I'm not gonna. I think I know this one. I'm gonna just stay out of it for a moment.
Yeah, I think actually you do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and go with just because I know James very well. I want to go ahead and say Montana.
Yeah, it is. It's Montana,
yeah.
And it's actually,
unfortunately,
it's almost like 2 to 1, and it's because you have a couple of different Forest Service pockets in there that are just deeply rooted in liberal ideology, and they just don't care. You know, they don't care what you say. They don't care if they violate any laws because there's nothing that holds them accountable that causes them to lose their job unless somebody files a lawsuit against them. Then it puts them in a bad light. But yeah, we get a lot of complaints out of Montana and the road closures. But, you know, and it's one of the things, Jaron, why we did videos on RS 2477, and RS stands for Revised Statute number 2477. It's basically a subset of the original mining grant of the 1800s, late 1800s.
Yeah.
And it basically states that all roads or modes of travel, meaning it could be a trail, you know, that people have used over the generations to access mining claims or whatever. But all of those roads that are in the public domain that are open to mineral entry are required to remain open. And what that basically means is if you got a map from 1975 and older and it shows a road on there in the public domain and the area hasn't been withdrawn or it's not a national park or a, you know, withdrawn area, then it's required to remain open. So in 1976, actually in October of 76, they created what's called FLPMA, and it's the Federal Land Policy Management Act, October 12th of 1976. And that basically gave these regulatory and the management agencies really oversight over roads that they can close. But here's the thing, and it's a very long act, a lot of language in it. But in the very end of that act, it states in there in black and white, this in no way infringes on the original RS 2477 designations from the mining grants.
Right.
So if it's a road that's older than October 12th, 1976, it's got to remain open.
And that's what's crazy is here I'm getting a little bit of static overlay here, and that's what's crazy is over where James was, at his first claim, that road has been open for how many freaking years, James?
It's 100 plus years. The original road was at the dead end of that road.
Yeah.
It was a great historical claim. The 50-50 plaster claim below mine had the original Chinese bath on it still. I mean, it was a really, really great place. The road was so old, and Forest Service took the back pocket to Stimson Lumber. That's the easiest way I can say it.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot more going on with that whole situation. I think, anybody on the outside can look at it, and say this, and the other, this, that, and the other. But, there's always something more going on to the situation. And that's the crappy thing about it, with what you just said, Shannon. That road specifically, should be open regardless. 110% should be open. And what Stimson did to it, they didn't have any authority whatsoever. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of the prospectors and miners, Montana, Idaho, the crap going on here in Washington. I think the biggest problem is, you're going up against these huge corporate giants. And, a lot of the times, a lot of these guys don't know where to turn. They don't know how to handle the situation because, it'll get brought back to the local sheriff's office. And then, the sheriff's office looks at it as a gray area. They don't know how to handle it. Exactly. And so it keeps turning into this revolving door that never seems to get anything taken care of. And then the prospector, or mining operation or whatever ends up shutting down, and they get so sick of it, they're done. Then they move on. And then, the corporate gets.
The core problem here, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, you're good.
Getting a hint of a lag here is, and it really, that's why we formed A.M.R.A, is that had the miner actually known what his rights were and what avenues he could go down and who he could reach out to for help, for free, because we don't actually charge anybody for anything like that. It's a resource, but that's the thing, is that's what we're trying to do, is to educate people. And, guys, we have a YouTube page. It's under American Mining Rights, and anybody can type that in there. But we specifically go through these issues about road closures and gates. We've actually gone out in front of a gate and actually shot videos and role played about the scenario and what the laws are, what you're protected by, and all those kind of things. And so the sad part is, and that's what these people really rely on, and it's just like whether it's mining or whether it's agriculture or whether it's about gun rights, is these people that don't like those fundamental rights will do anything that they can do to circumvent them. And the way to overcome that is through education and knowing what your rights are. So, it's easy for me, because I've been doing this for quite a long time, is to talk about these things, and I can quote code numbers and things like that out of the Forest Service manuals. And, nobody has to memorize all that stuff. But if you know what your fundamental rights are and then you apply those, there's a really good chance that you're going to overcome that at the moment that it happens. Right. In James' particular incident, this is really an unusual one, because this is a really blatant violation of his rights. So, and I'm sure that the listeners are going, well, what the hell was the issue? So let me James, you just in a Reader's Digest version, just explain what happened.
To take a really long story short, I had a claim on Libby Creek in Montana called Goldenback Acres. We were doing our exploratory operations. I gave my notice of intent to the Forest Service. Everything was fine. I did everything through the BLM that I was supposed to do. I filed all my paperwork. Everything was great. I was in there one day in March with my daughter and my brother-in-law. We were working this area, and we don't have to go into the details there, but Stimson Lumber, background on Stimson Lumber, they're the 5th oldest corporation in America that predates the Civil War. They're massive. It forced me to do a lot of research on who this was, but we were high banking. 2 employees that they said were from Stimson Lumber. They were awfully large gentlemen. They surprised us from behind and started telling us that we had to leave, that we were on Stimson Lumber land. I know I was not on Stimson Lumber land. Everything is surveyed correctly up until this spring, and then a new survey came through, and it doesn't correlate at all with the plot map that I was given from the Hard Minerals Office for Montana and the Dakotas. So I argued with them. I had my daughter with me. I did not want to deal with law enforcement at the time, so we packed up for the day and we went home. The following the Tuesday, this was a Sunday. A Tuesday, I get a call from a friend that works on Libby Creek as well. He has 2 claims, and he sent me a picture of 2 massive trenches. I can't call them berms. These things are trenches. They're 9-10 feet deep. Each one's 12 feet wide with massive piles of dirt and rock in front of them, and they completely cut off access to this road. And like I said before, this road's been around 100 years. It's historical. It should have never been closed. There's a claim below mine that has been there since the 40s that has had access to it. So I called the Forest Service, and they go, well, that's Stimson Lumber's road. We're not going to, in a nutshell, we're not going to do anything about that. I found out by more phone calls, Stimson Lumber never even filed for a notice of intent to dig these trenches, and I found out they were supposed to do that at least. But burning off this road caused us a massive headache. We just decided that we needed to work around it. Hopefully we could work it out. And we've talked to Stimson. We talked to Stimson a few times, tried to get a gate. Stimson's whole thing was about forest fires and people camping, because yes, my claim in Stimson Lumber's land shared one boundary, and it's a really funny boundary because they can't log within 100 yards of the stream anyway, so there's no point in arguing about that. But we come in after these berms have been in. Jaron has been in with us at one time at that point. We showed him around. We had found a great little bench area to dig in, and I came in with my family, and we had set up Gold Camp. I come in one day, and a Forest Service game warden was there, and we started talking, and he starts bullying me and threatening me, and I start talking about RS 2477, and I really tried to exert my rights in the situation, and he told me if I didn't remove my things from my camp that was on my claim, which was part of Forest Service ground, but I agree with Shannon, yes, it's our public ground. It is not the Forest Service.
Yeah, they don't own it.
Myself and my entire family with criminal trespass prosecution and being arrested. Now, getting arrested in some place like Libby, Montana isn't a really good thing. You sit in a very small jail, and you wait for them to extradite you down to Missoula, which is Democratic Mecca of Montana. To give a little bit of Montana political science, that's where most of your Forest Service employees come out of, is the University of Montana. It has a forestry program there that is ancient. It starts with the college does. It's one of the oldest colleges in the country. But yes, we were threatened with arrest and prosecution if we didn't remove all of our stuff. And at the same time, he's acknowledging, yes, you have a right to work your claim, but you're going to have to cross Stimson Lumber property to get to this claim, which means, and they will not allow you to do that. And if you do that, then we're going to get back into this whole criminal prosecution for trespass again.
Now, didn't they file a load claim over the top of you too?
Yes, and this goes on, and I'm waiting for
which blows my mind
to get back from Billings. I'm like, what's holding my paperwork up? What's going on? So I call Billings to find out what's going on, and I find out that Stimson Lumber, and that was probably part of that survey that I didn't make the click, was that they filed a load claim right on top of the placer claim, which in essence, at that point, it's done,
Well, and then that was backed up by the sheriff too.
And that was also backed up by the sheriff's department. And Stimson has not filed anything with the county, with the title office at all, notary, and for the plot maps to say what's going on, what they're going to do. There's been no update. I've gone in there and looked at them. It's all public access stuff, but the headache was too much. And I don't have time to deal with legal matters. It's too expensive for me. And I said, enough's enough. And we just let it go. We said no more to that claim. And things really ended up working out for the best. The BLM pushed me out of the Harbinow's office, gave me some information on a very, very nice claim, which we have now filed the paperwork and everything is on its way. But yeah, that's the nutshell of it, is that it felt like you couldn't get it really felt in the situation that no matter what my rights were, I was going to have to fight it from the side of, first, I'm going to jail. And at 46 years old, I'm not willing to go to that extent anymore.
And they stood
there.
Yeah, and they stood there.
Yeah.
The whole entire time while he was packing his equipment out, and they basically told him, hey, you step foot on this property, you're going directly to jail, which is it blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind.
To get to Goldenback Acres, you had to cross about a 75-yard section that was Stimson Lumber's. It was.
So let me interject here, guys. So this is a really good example, and I'm glad that we brought this up, of bullying, and that's exactly what it is, but bullying with a lot of illegal activities. So firstly, I sincerely doubt that it is Stimson's land. It is a timber lease that they got from the frickin' Forest Service, which is still public lands.
Right.
That road clearly, and I actually looked at it, that road clearly is an RS 2477 road. So that RS 2477 road was well in existence prior to October 12th of 1976. It's in the public domain. The land is open for mineral entry, obviously, because you had a mining claim there, James.
Yes.
And so it meets all of the requirements as a definition of an RS 2477 road. When you file a mining claim, which you did, and you recorded it with the county, you made a valuable mineral discovery, you did the paperwork, the county recordation, and then you paid your money to actually file the claim at the Bureau of Land Management. Bureau of Land Ownership. It's Bureau of Land Management that manages mining claims. And so you've met all of the conditions as far as the federal law goes on having a valid claim. Just because Stimson has a lease on a timber lease there, that doesn't take your rights, your fundamentally granted rights, away from you. There's a big difference, and this is something, and I'm just going to kind of go on for a bit here, is the people have to understand the difference between a right and a privilege. So a privilege on public lands is something that a fisherman has in going and being able to fish Libby Creek. The Forest Service or whatever management agency can come along and go, no, you can't go in there. There is no reason that they can deny you access to your federal mining claim. And there's case history all the way to the Supreme Court specifically on that. As a matter of fact, the Steve Hicks case, I believe, is out of Montana, and it dealt with that very subject because he was the same thing. He was actually, I think, arrested because they had put up a gate. He went around the gate, but he was getting to the mine to actually go do mining operations.
Yep.
So Stimson is lying in the fact that it is not Stimson's land. It's public lands that they have a logging lease on, which allows them to go and harvest logs. But Stimson, by law, cannot materially interfere with your mining operation. That's a federal offense.
Yeah.
The same thing is when they went in and file a load claim on top of your placer claim, the process of filing a mining claim, whether it be load or placer, is the same thing.
Yes,
you actually have to go to the ground. You have to determine that it's open for mineral entry and that it's not already claimed. So there's fault number one. That didn't happen. They already knew you had a mining claim there. The second thing that you have to do is you have to go in and make a valuable mineral discovery. Well, how do you do that? You go dig a frickin' hole. And if they went and dug a hole on your mining claim with the intent for valuable mineral recovery, gold, then they've actually violated another law in claim jumping. And, that's a federal offense as well. Then they falsified documents because that we all know that didn't happen. They never put up a discovery monument. They didn't do any of those things. That claim could be contested, and it should be, completely pitched. But then they took it a step further, and they get the sheriff involved, who the sheriff takes their side, saying that you don't have any rights and that they recognize theirs now over yours, even though you were there first and you recorded it and you did all the right things. So it just shows you how corrupt this whole system is if you got a lot of frickin' money, and maybe he's making donations to the sheriff's daughter's soccer fund. I don't know. I don't know. I may know this sheriff because I just was dealing with one over there, but it was out of Great Falls recently. I don't know if he covers the same. I don't think it's the same county. But, the sad part is, guys, and it's just like whether it's an environmental group, a radical environmental group, or even the Forest Service, the BLM, or in this case, Stimson, is that these people, they don't fear anything because they have so much money that they know you don't have a lot of money. So you have to have fundraisers and bake sales or, whatever you're going to do, sell fucking balloons on the street corner to raise money to go and sue them. Now, I believe that you would absolutely win because all of the laws are on your side. But that's the thing is they make you go away and they're like, okay, cool, we're mega powerful. And so then they just do it to the next person and the next person and the next.
Intimidation. That's exactly what it is.
So let's morph into this thing here, Jaron, about the Accountability Act. And this is something that, as we were dealing with this over the years, we recognized there was a real fundamental problem within the Forest Service and within the BLM on these rogue agents that just completely disregard any types of laws, or in this case, James's fundamentally granted rights. Yeah. So if everybody remembers when Trump came into office, there were a lot of complaints about the Veterans Administration and how poorly the veterans were being treated. And it was some of the most horrific crap that I've ever read. It actually made me want to just go out and start knocking people upside the head because it pissed me off so bad. But Trump came out with the Veterans Administration and Accountability Act, and it was probably one of my most favorite pieces of legislation I've ever seen. And it basically, to put it in a nutshell, said that if you're an employee at the VA and you are operating outside the scope and course of your employment and you're doing crap and mistreating veterans, you're freaking fired, you lose your pension, and you can't work for government anymore. Simple. And they fired, I believe it was 8,600 employees out of the VA in the first 2 years. Phenomenal. And you know what? It turned the VA. I have a lot of friends that are vets, and they said, Jesus, the culture changed overnight, and people were getting fired right and left. That's the way it should be. So what we did is about a year and a half ago, we were down in LA actually at a gold show, myself and our staff, and we have Connie, who is this little tiny gal within A.M.R.A. She's on our board. She's actually our COO. Came up with this idea of, because we were talking about all these problems. I was dealing, as a matter of fact, at that time with a guy from Montana that the Forest Service was just running ragged over. And we're like, God, this is such a crappy problem. We don't have the money to sue every single little Forest Service pocket agency that there is in the country. There's got to be a solution to that. And so Connie brought up the idea of this Veterans Administration Accountability Act and said, what if we took that and we modified the language and put BLM and we put the Forest Service in there, and we sent that to Congress and have them pass this. So that's what we did, is we took that and we changed the language in it to specifically identify the Forest Service and the BLM. And then we sent that to a United States senator who absolutely loved it. And anyway, so he started sharing that with other senators, and some, even on the Democrat side, said, yeah, we need this. So it had bipartisan support. So everything was going really good on this thing. That was in November and in December. And so in January, we got a phone call and said, hey, we'd like you guys to come to Washington, D.C., and let's present this. And let's go around and we'll meet with the Secretary of the Department of Interior, Secretary of the Department of Ag, and we'll roll this out. And this was under the Trump administration. And 3 days, we'd booked the flights, we had cars. Hell, we even bought Jerry a damn suit and a tie that wasn't from 1988. And, we were all jacked up and we were ready to go. 3 days before we were to fly out, this is on a Friday, we were going to fly out Tuesday to D.C., and this was going to kick this thing off, is when they shut down the whole country for the scamdemic. And the rest of its history is they wouldn't allow any travel to D.C., obviously, until after this past election. And so that's still there. We still have it with the senator. We still talk to him about this. And, it's something that needs to pass, but that's something that can be done at the federal level that, when you deal with, not in James's case, because that's a Stimson thing, but, it'll eliminate a lot of these problems that we have with these Forest Service rogue agents that are going out putting gates up all over the place. By the way, I have a truck that's called Gate Killer. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I literally have a logo on the back of the truck that says Gate Killer. Not that I would ever do anything like that, of course, remove a gate with a truck and a 12,000-pound winch. But, anyway, we don't have the problems down here. We're lucky where I'm at is we've got a really good Forest Service that understands in their manual, and that is exactly what Congress mandated, what they could and couldn't do. It states right in there, and I think the first couple of pages, that their job at the Forest Service, and I'll use quotes, is to foster and encourage mining.
Right.
So prohibit.
Right.
So,
well, I got a few different questions here. A couple of good questions coming out of Idaho, and then we also have a few other things. Before we get to that real quick, for the guys that are watching us here, I got a picture that I was able to actually pull up, and hopefully it pops up on screen here. For those that don't know what Stimson did over on James's old claim here, I'm going to click on this and see if it works here.
There you go.
That there is what they did. If you look closely, you can see that there's 3 or 4 different berms.
There's 4 berms and
4
2
berms.
trenches. So the back berm in that photo is the second trench. Yep. And you work your way towards yourself, and there'll be 2 smaller berms. Then there's another trench, and then there's that biggest berm right in front of you there.
Yep. So that's what Stimson did, and it would have been one thing if it was BLM or Forest Service or whatever, whoever controls the operations out there. But the fact that it was Stimson, that should open your eyes on what's going on right now. If Stimson and other companies are able to do things like that, without even contacting the BLM or anything like that, I mean, they're really overreaching, overstepping their boundaries of what they can and cannot do with their operations. So I figured I'd show you guys a picture of that real quick. That way for, whoever didn't see that post a while back, kind of give you a understanding. So
that area, has been used for years. It's not just a mining area. It's been used by people that swim, families that swim, fish. A lot of access was cut off to a lot of people.
Camping
it's sad. Yep. It really is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, there's only a couple of ways that they can actually close the lands off, and most of them take acts of Congress. Fires are one we've dealt quite a bit with, is that if it's an emergency situation, you got people in there fighting a fire, then obviously, that's something that they can make an emergency declaration. But a lot of these folks, the rogue agents, will take that to the extreme. And I can give you an example here in the Stanislaus National Forest. Back in 2014, we had what was called the Rim Fire. 250,000 acres burned all the way to Yosemite, and it took out everything up here. And the supervisor at the time, a former activist out of Berkeley that Obama appointed, she came in and just closed 560,000 acres of roads, all of them. And it was right where all my mining claims were. And we ended up calling her out actually on camera during a televised thing.
Best time to do it.
Oh, yeah. And she panicked, literally panicked, and ran down the hallway. And anyway, because I told her we were going to bring about 500 angry miners to her doorstep. And I told her I don't mean the Forest Service. And anyway, so she opened the roads back up that was on a Friday, and she opened the roads back up on Tuesday. But the thing is they do actually have, by law, some reasons why they can close things. But most of the times it has to be a withdrawal that Congress does, is, they're making a new, whatever, national park or,
Right.
Wildland area.
Historical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it blows my mind. That's for sure. Let's go ahead and take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. And hey, Shannon, what about me loading you up with some questions?
Yeah, no worries.
Couple questions out of Idaho. We got a couple other questions.
I have one myself, and it's a really light one. What states do you have claims in before we go on this break?
Well, hold on. We're gonna hold on. We got that. That's part of the.
Okay.
The
Right. That's a teaser, everybody.
All right, we're back. So, good old Q&A time there, Shannon. Alrighty, so we got a few based out of Idaho. Good buddy of mine out of PB came up with a couple of really good questions. And then I know James has some good questions as well. To go ahead and start off, I got a question from myself that's pretty straightforward, I'd say. With the rules and regulations changing rapidly in the last few years for miners and prospectors, should we be worried?
With this administration, oh yeah. I think that we all can recognize now, seeing what's going on, not just with small scale mining, but just with our country in general, is that there's a real shift so far left that it's literally Marxist ideology. And the Marxist belief, and I'm not going to get real deep into politics here, really doesn't believe in private property, and they certainly don't believe in public lands. And so I think that you're going to see that get chiseled away at every turn. It's one of the things that, and I know, Jaron, you know this, I actually went and met with an almond farmer today and with my camera and interviewed him, and I'm working on a project really to kind of bring light to the whole water aspect of what this administration is doing in this state and actually several states. But I think, yeah, it's one of those things. You know, you can use California as an example. The things that happen in California, Washington adopts. The things that Washington adopts, Oregon wants to adopt, because these three states in this line here are all so far left that they make Bernie Sanders blush. And so, you know, they just don't like the things that we can do, and they literally despise the fact that you can actually file a claim on federal lands and then go make money off of that, because it's something that they literally can't control. And so yes, in answer to the question, I'm concerned. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that are going on, and some changes and executive orders and things like that really isn't supposed to be how our republic was supposed to work. Is, you know, we're supposed to be governed by representatives who are at the behest of the people. The people tell the representatives what to do, and they're supposed to represent us. And it's really changed, really kind of more into a totalitarian style state. And so I think that, yeah, I'm concerned, obviously, if you can get things changed at the federal level, like what we were talking about with the act, I think that you can take bites out of things. But yeah, I'm concerned. A good example here is in California. You know, the original argument that they made in 2009 is that we kill salmon, you know, and they just throw crap against the wall and see what sticks. Well, then when everybody came back and said, well, you know, 80% of the mining claims in California don't have anadromous fish, there are no salmon or steelhead, they immediately switched to, oh, well, and it's all about mercury. Right. And so that's their argument. It's whatever the argument is of the day that they think that they can make stick. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, the goal, you have to understand what their end game is to eliminate all mining at all mining. Unless you're a giant corporation that donates millions of dollars to their reelection campaign, they're going to come after you. Right.
And that's the thing that, you know, we were kind of discussing yesterday, you know, with small scale miners and prospectors, you know, is getting unified. You know, that's huge more than ever, you know, being able to unify. I know, you know, the typical miner's ideology is, you know, here's my honey hole and I've worked my tail off to get it, you know, and nobody else is going to come there. And that's fine. You know, that's perfectly fine. You know, that, you know, we're not looking to change that kind of ideology whatsoever, because that's obviously been around for hundreds of years. You know, what we were talking about was, you know, unifying each other and standing up against, you know, the unlawful stuff that's happening, you know, whether it be where James, you know, with what happened with James, what's happening in Idaho, what's happening here in Washington. You know, if we're able to actually unify and come together instead of, you know, trying to fight these giants single-handedly, that's going to greater our chances to be able to get stuff to Congress, to be able to get, bills passed and stuff like that, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is unification. That's huge. So,
that's probably been our biggest challenge. I shouldn't say probably. It has been our biggest challenge over the years, is to get unity. Right. And, if you look at a small scale miner, most of us are very independent people. We're very strong-willed, strong-minded people, and we certainly don't like people telling us what the hell to do. Right. And if we know we're right and you have the law on your side, then, we basically stand up. The problem that we have with unifying the miners is, one is they infight like unbelievable. Everybody seems to know everything, and that's really
right. Toxic. Very toxic.
It is. Yeah. It creates a toxic environment, but that's been the biggest challenge, is really creating that unity with the miners. And I think that we've done as much as we really could. And so what we're trying to do now is to really branch out to the other groups. And that means ag and the logging groups and the ranchers and the people that use the water that they really seem to be going after, with the Clean Water Act and the WOTUS rule and the EPA and all this kind of crap. I mean, it's never ending. It's why we went and stood up in Idaho. We were originally contacted by, I think, 5 miners in Idaho up on the South Fork that, they were being threatened by the EPA, $37,500 per day fines if they didn't get this ridiculous permit that claims that they pollute. And so they contacted me, and we sat down, we talked about it, and I said, well, look, let me talk to some attorneys, let me talk to some other folks that I trust that really are knowledgeable in this. And so we did. We actually went out and we talked for 4 months to attorneys and Clean Water Act specialists and people that have sued the EPA and all these different things. And they came back unanimously, even the gold groups and the other groups out there, and said, well, yeah, they can't do this. And so we went up there and stood up and challenged the EPA on this. And we did that for several years. And of course, Obama did some alterations to the Clean Water Act and allowed an environmental group to sue if they believe that the EPA doesn't do their job. But I actually brought something, and I want to, while we were on break there, I want to show you this. And this is something from Sandra Day O'Connor. Some people may recognize her name. She was a United States Supreme Court justice. And this was a pretty famous case, one that the miners always cite. And it's basically her soup pot theory. So for those of us that have ran a dredge, we know what a dredge does. Is the hose lifts up gravel, runs it across the sluice box, and it drops that gravel back into the river or the creek, maybe 20 feet from where you lifted it up. But it actually cleans that gravel because you're removing lead, you're removing mercury, and all of those heavy elements. Fish hooks, I mean, hell, we found pocket knives, coins. I mean, you name it, that people have found it in their sluice boxes. So her argument was this, and this is a quote, is, I'll back up here. So this is a soup pot and a ladle. And she said, if you dip the ladle into the soup pot and you lift it up and you pour it back in, are you adding anything?
Nope.
Am I adding anything? Of course not. And you're not doing that with suction dredging. As a matter of fact, there's a net removal in the lead and the mercury and things of that nature. And so it doesn't qualify for an NPDES permit. There's 132 items that are listed on the EPA website under the Clean Water Act that are pollutants, and turbidity isn't one of them. Right. Since we don't add any of those elements, where's the pollution? Right. So that has been our argument, obviously, in the lawsuit that we've got going on all along. It's the primary argument, is that there's not an addition, and therefore there's no pollutant added, therefore it doesn't qualify. Right. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of
that no, that was a great example. So one of the questions out of Idaho here, and bear with me. Let's see. Okay, so this is another one of my questions that goes back to the first question here. In what ways can we help change the narrative of the rules and regulations, and what options do we have as miners and prospectors to help stand up against being pushed out doing what we love to do?
It's as simple as, this is a really, really simple question to answer. People got to get involved, man. When, we have a very active and a very popular social media platform. By the way, Zuckerberg. So, absolutely despise Facebook. We've been shadow banned and all kinds of crap over the years. That guy's just a prick. But anyway, when we post something like we just posted this morning, Oregon is looking at making it a criminal offense to hunt. No kidding. I mean, it's just jaw-dropping stuff. It's the things that we were posting about Washington when we were working with Justin Carr, and all of the times that they've tried to ban suction dredging in the state of Washington with that Fran Tarleton representative that you have up there.
It's been a nightmare over here. It's been a nightmare.
She's farther left than the frickin' Castro in Cuba.
It's been a nightmare.
Here's the problem is that people read this stuff and they go, well, that's BS, man. They're trying to close all these roads in Arizona and everything. That sucks. Oh, what's on TV?
Right.
They don't pick up a phone. Most people don't even know who their damn representative is.
Right.
They don't know who their congressman or woman is. They don't know who their senator is. They don't know who their state representatives are. Hell, most of them don't even know who their county supervisors are.
Right.
There's the problem right there. So if people are
not being informed,
well, if they're complacent and they don't do anything about it, I mean, if you polled all of the people that are watching this program right now and asked them, how many of you have called a senator in the last year or ever?
Right.
Few of us, obviously. They have some that like me and some of them really hate me, but that's the way it is.
That's the reality of it, is what it is.
But that's really what it comes down to, Jared, is that when these people understand what we face, the only way to change that is to put pressure on the politicians. There's only really two things that politicians fear. One is going broke, and the only way that they're going to go broke is if you kick them out of office, because they make millions of dollars as a politician.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. We had an issue down in Arizona. It was probably one of the better things that I was contacted by Kevin Hoagland, who's an executive with the GPAA, and he sends me this thing that says, Jesus, Shannon, they're closing like 245,000 acres of land down there in Arizona, and there's mining claims, and all these people like to off-road and everything else. And we did a real big media campaign on that. We put up all of the different congressmen's names and phone numbers and emails to call, and they got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to actually respond to it down there, and they killed it instantly. That's the kind of stuff that it takes. So if people are just reading about it, getting pissed and throwing their fist on the table, it's great.
Not doing anything about it.
Doing nothing. That's the problem, is complacency.
Right. Well, we got another one here. This one is from Idaho, Mr. Sergio. He says, in the state of Idaho, a person is supposed to have to purchase a recreational mining permit that allows them to dig below the mean high water mark of creeks and rivers, and they want to know the location and whether the person is a resident or an out-of-state, or just depends on the fees that they pay. LOL. But then there's also the Mining Act of 1872, which is the mining law that allows United States citizens and firms to explore for minerals and establish rights to them on federal lands without authorization from any government agency. Which law would a resident have to follow?
Well, the problem that we face is with the states is that, there's two basic entities here. There's the federal government, and then there's the state. And so the federal government has created the Clean Water Act and things like that. And most states have adopted those EPA policies and all that kind of stuff. In Idaho, yes, you have to, and I hate the term recreational permit, because what I do is not recreational. I do it for a living. This is how I make my money. I know James, you're the same way.
Yep.
There's nothing that I do that's recreational. I'm not tossing my gold back at the end of the frickin' day like a fisherman. I'm mining to make money, and it's a business. So but the states have to have either equal or more stringent policy within the state to meet the federal guidelines. So the states can require this on certain things. The Idaho, in Idaho, if it's an Idaho-owned river, that's a part of their original documents that they own the rivers, we've researched extensively, and there's a lot of them. Then they can require certain things like that, like a permit. We've gotten their silly little recreational permit. It was $35 even for a non-resident. I don't know the legalities of being a non-resident. I mean, I own mining claims in Idaho in my name, but my residence is actually in California. So the difference was pretty negligible. And the Idaho Department of Water Resources, who actually administers that permit, while I think that they're starting to turn more liberal, progressive, or whatever they're calling themselves today, and starting to get a little bit more restrictive. Back in the day, you just paid $35 online and they sent you a little thing in the mail and you went and dredged.
Right.
Now it's morphed into all these inspections and, they restricted it. You can't have a rope across the road or the river, which is really ridiculous because that would really kind of be materially interfering with your mining operation. The reason that they say you can't have a rope across the river is in case a rafter comes down who has a privilege to use the land where you have a fundamental right and you're actually doing a mining operation. So, it's again one of those instances, Jaron, where you need a lot of money and you need to sue the crap out of them to actually reverse some of these things. And the problem being, and this is what we call the perpetual cycle, is these agencies, states and federal governments, EPA, they have an unlimited amount of money. If they want more money, they can the phone and call Janet Yellen and say, print me another billion, and then they'll fight you. And they have banks of attorneys and you don't.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of goes back to your question that you had a little while ago. Am I concerned? Well, yeah.
No, most definitely. And then James, go ahead and ask him your question there, buddy.
You're on
muted.
Mute,
You're muted, buddy.
I can see you're on mute.
It's smoky here. I had to clear my throat. No, what states do you have does the A.M.R.A have claims in? Shannon?
Well, I'm proud to say that we actually just picked up 4 claims in Montana, 4 dredge claims. And it's from a guy. These are old claims. They've been around for a long time. The guy's in his 70s. And we helped him, as a matter of fact, with a Forest Service issue over the course of a couple of years and prevailed on it. And he's like, look, I don't dredge them anymore. I'm going to donate access to you. And so I'm proud to announce, we're finally in Montana. My buddy Robert Birgitz over there has been actively looking for some claims for us as well. So we may be adding, 1 or 2 more. But so we're in Montana. We've got, I think, 5 or 6 claims in Colorado. And some of those go all the way up to 14,000 feet in elevation.
Holy crap.
Which, by the way, if you dredge at that elevation, there's a little graph that you need to use because your motors lose a substantial amount of power at each 1,000 feet that you go up. And I think it's like 3%. Jeff at Proline told me that. And so 14,000 feet, you're losing, what is that, 42% of your motor capabilities?
Holy crap.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty remarkable. Yeah. And then we just added 2 really, really good metal detecting claims in New Mexico. And it's kind of funny, the guy that actually found those, we helped him out with an issue, a road closure issue. And anyway, this guy, he went out and found a 1/4 ounce in the first day just with a metal detector. It's never been hit. And so we added those 2 claims. We've got a ton of claims, I think over 20 of them in Arizona. We are in the process of picking up a new claim in Nevada. We've got 40 plus claims in California. And then we also have, I think, 3 claims in Southern Oregon. We did actually have 2 claims in Washington, and through a paperwork snafu, we lost those, and somebody immediately went in and filed on them, and we couldn't get them back. So we're still looking for decent claims in Washington, but so that's a lot of claims. I think we have 85 or 87 claims. I lose count.
That's awesome.
I believe it's 7 states, soon to be 8 or 9.
That is very awesome.
Yeah, they're good claims too. The one thing that we held very firm to is we would never, ever pick up a claim just to say we have a claim somewhere. And that's why we don't have a claim in Nevada. We've went and mined probably 15 locations in Nevada, but none of them were good enough really for us, because we feel that if you're an A.M.R.A member and you spend $200 to join us, it's tax deductible. But you know what? For a year membership, and if you go out to the claim and you spend a weekend there, you should be able to at least pay for your lunch money and your gas to get there. And that's really kind of the I guess the line that we set there. And we haven't found any decent claims in Nevada, although we've got a buddy over there mining that I think that we've got one now that looks really promising. But yeah, so we won't get crappy claims.
Well, we got another question, and this is from Mr. Raw McGuire here. He says, what is Shannon's favorite case that A.M.R.A won?
Well, we've only filed one lawsuit, and that was with the taser incident. We've involved attorneys in a lot of different issues, but never had to file suit on a lot of those. What we call a case is really something that gets to the point where you have to involve legal minds, an actual licensed attorney. That's probably my favorite because that's so egregious, and it's just so in your face wrong that anyway, and it made the veterans very happy. But we've got a lot of victories. We had one down in Barstow that kind of comes to mind too, where the BLM, we had an outing down there. Actually, we went down for an outing with some other gold clubs, and specifically because the BLM was closing all the roads to the mining claims, and then said that they'd come out and arrest anybody that went out to their mining claims. So
wow.
We jumped in the truck, drove down there, and I stopped and met with them at the BLM office and said, well, I'm going to be out there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Send your troops, see what happens. And of course, they never showed up, and then they backed down, and everything was fine. But a lot of cases like that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so a lot of your guys' cases, once it reaches you guys, and you fly to that state and basically say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Seems to me like, they actually back down and it gets resolved out of court. And, that's almost a nicer thing to happen, a better thing to happen, both on, your aspect and the person that came to you, because that way, you don't have all that, the problem with the, attorneys, this, that, trying to schedule dates, to fly back out there and so on and so forth. So it seems to me like, what you guys are able to accomplish outside of court is freaking phenomenal. That's awesome, man. I mean,
and a lot of times it's, we try not to come across as really pushy or arrogant or things like that. We come across as extremely confident on knowledge of the law. And that's what intimidates them, because I can't tell you how many times we know for a fact when we have a conference call with a miner from, northeastern Washington and the Forest Service, and we all get on the phone call with the supervisor, the geologist, and the ranger and the miner, and we start quoting their numbers like 2813.14 of the USFS 2800 manual, that you have a fundamental right to grant this person access. You can't do this. And are you familiar with that? And they look at you like,
oh,
really? You don't even know your own freaking manual that you're supposed to be using as the Bible of what you can and can't do?
Yeah, the guideline.
So that's the thing. But we try to approach it really kind of in a very professional and a somewhat polite manner initially. And then if that doesn't work, then we start calling senators or congressmen and media or whatever else we need to do. The thing here in California, when they did the taser incident, like I told you last night, we called the largest news agency in the state out of Sacramento, right out of the Capitol, and they came down to the creek with the miner and with us, and we filmed a 30-minute segment. They aired about 15 minutes of it on national TV.
National TV.
The Forest Service freaking panicked. Things like that. But, again, it goes back to the thing that we started talking about is the best thing that we can actually do for the miners is to educate them on what their rights are.
Yeah.
Right.
Period.
Right. No,
Gotta be
100%.
knowledgeable.
I wholeheartedly agree on that. Well, it looks like we got one more question for you. This one's a little bit longer. Let's see here. So, second question deals with an area with water restrictions. This is based out of Idaho, by the way, Shannon. In 1991, climbing wells in this area put water restrictions and no access to prospectors or no access to prospectors or mining due to irrigation issues. Why are prospectors cut out of the loop to get water rights to high bank, dryland dredge, or dredging when the water we use is typically within 100 feet of the creek or river and all the water gets absorbed right back into the water table?
Well, I don't know what climbing wells means. I'm not sure I understand what the question is.
I think climbing wells, if I remember correctly, are specific irrigation wells.
Okay, maybe that's a ranching or agricultural term or something I'm unfamiliar with. Miners have first right of the water if they have a mining claim on there, and that's spelled out in the mining grants. I guess I'm not real sure.
Understanding the question. Yeah, no, that's
maybe.
Okay. So I just got a message there. So he's saying declining well water. So it says.
Oh, declining well water.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
What the hell is climbing wells? I've never heard sure, man.
Okay. Hey, I typed this up pretty quick, so I must have had an autocorrect on that. But yeah, declining well water. Sorry about that.
So is somebody using well water to do a mining operation, a research system, or something of that nature?
So it says in 1991, declining well water in a specific area put water restrictions and no access to prospectors or mining due to irrigation issues.
Okay, well, so let's stop right there for a second. So prospectors is not the same as a mining claim owner.
Correct.
There's a big difference there. That's somebody going out. Can the state do that?
Probably.
Probably. I'm not saying that they can. It would probably be a really good question for an attorney. The states can, if they declare something as an emergency, then you've got hurdles to overcome. And it sounds to me like that's something that they probably made that declaration. And it could be for prospecting and things like that. You have a lot of rights as a prospector. You're going out to try to find a claim and all that kind of stuff, and it's all spelled out in the mining grants. But once you file a mining claim, that really changes a lot of things. And like I say, the actual claim itself is recognized as real property in every sense of the word, to actually quote the courts. And then you have those first right of timber, water rights. You have first use of water, those kind of things, which obviously a lot of these agencies ignore. But that's a tough one. I think that
varies per state too.
Yeah.
No,
that actually brings us to another point of why I met with this farmer today, and he's actually an A.M.R.A member. So he's facing something very similar to what us dredgers are, and that is he's got a little tiny almond farm. It's 10 acres, and he makes a decent amount of money. The guy's in his 70s, but he's actually pumping his well water up, and that's irrigating his trees through a drip line. And they're claiming that he is polluting because there's nitrates in the well water. He's pumping it up, putting it onto his trees, and it's soaking back into the ground. So again, let's go back to this. Pumping it out of the well, back in. What are you adding? Well, I guess theoretically they're saying that you could have fertilizers or things like that actually absorb into the water that's leaching down into the aquifer. Although that has all been tested, and it's just theory. You're innocent until proven guilty. But again, the big picture is this, guys. They don't want you doing this crap. So they're just going to make shit up until they can shut you down.
Yep.
Idaho's no different.
Yeah.
Idaho scares me because, I've been going to Idaho for 30 years. In the position that I had with the former, I was an executive, a high-level executive in a multi-billion-dollar corporation that was based out of Boise, and I was going there for all the way back into the 80s. And, Idaho was kind of that bastion of conservatism and American spirit and freedom and patriotism. Right. And now you've got Nampa and Boise controlling the electorate. Idaho's starting to turn a little purple. Yeah. And that's really kind of concerning because once they, look at Oregon. I grew up in Oregon, and Portland and Eugene and basically Grants Pass and to some small degree Salem control the entire state. All the other counties in the state are ignored. You take those 4 counties, control everything.
Right.
That's going to happen in Idaho unless people really get off their ass and start voting.
Right. No, I wholeheartedly agree. James, did you happen to have any more questions, bud?
No, I'm good. Shannon really covered all the bases I had really well.
Okay, perfect. I had one last thing there for you, Shannon. For any of the new guys that are watching this broadcast here, just now getting into prospecting and things like that, I want to try to, give any new prospector as much opportunity as possible for educational videos. And one thing that I did see that you guys do is the quote unquote thinking outside the creek videos. And I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on that, because, if I had that kind of knowledge when I first was starting prospecting and getting out there, I think I would have, had a lot less trips going home with no gold compared to actually going home with gold. So
it's a game changer.
Yeah. So for the new guys out there, if you want to just explain a little bit about, the videos that you guys have up there, and kind of where they can find it, I think that'd be awesome.
So our YouTube page is American Mining Rights. You can actually go to our website, AmericanMiningRights.com, and there's a tab you can click on videos, and you can pull up all of those. And I think we've got 100 videos out there. But I'm gonna fold this into 2 different topics here. We had one last night that I think that got you more interested when I was talking to you, telling you about J.N. Perlow.
Yeah.
Than anything else that we had discussed.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
For those that don't know, I'm on Facebook and I don't go by Shannon Poe. I created my account under the name J.N. Perlow, like Merlot, like the wine, back in the mid 2000s, long before A.M.R.A was ever even a thought, because the dude is my hero. So Perlow was a miner that came to America in 1851. Him and 5 other buddies jumped on a boat. He's from Belgium and he had friends from France. And they got on a frickin' boat because they heard that you could come to California and pick up gold the size of baked potatoes off the ground everywhere you walked. So that started the gold rush. And he came here. He landed in, I want to say Carmel or San Luis Obispo or somewhere like that, down in the central portion of the coast. And they literally walked from there, from the ocean, all the way to Mariposa, which is the gateway going into Yosemite National Park. And so his first few months that he was here, he went to work for a guy that had some claims in a place called Bear Valley. It's about 10 miles from my shop. And he was getting paid like $1 a day to dig holes for this guy. And Perlow went, well, this is freaking stupid. Why the hell am I, this guy's making like, $100 a day off the bus, getting paid $1. This is BS. So he went, okay, well, screw you, dude. I'm out of here. And he went off on his own with his buddies, and they started mining the creeks right in my backyard. I mean, he's the reason really why I have my property there and why I have all these mining claims up there. And there's a reason I'm bringing up Perlow, because what Perlow did is the reason why I shot the video of Thinking Outside the Creek. So, Jaron, I'm Perlow, and you're my French buddy, Jaron, and you know what? We go up to Bull Creek, and you have to understand, guys, that back in the day, a lot of the creeks, probably almost all of them, got mined. They all got worked. Some of them you'll find virgin ground on, like what we did this year. We found some amazingly rich virgin ground in a spot that was seriously like 3 ounce kind of an hour kind of stuff, and it was really amazing. But they went along and they would have to, because they're way out in the middle of nowhere, their supplies, they would have to hike a full day just to go get beans and bacon. A shovel today, if you went to Lowe's and bought a shovel, costs you less today than what he paid for it, dollar to dollar, in 1851. They were paying $20 for a shovel in 1851. Gold was $18 an ounce. So do the math on how much a shovel cost in 1851 is about $2,000. That's a pretty significant difference. So Perlot, and he writes about this in his book. It's a book called Gold Seeker, and it's my favorite book of all time, is they would go down and they would basically gut punch a creek. So let's say it's you and I. We walk down there. We're going to go right to where the water is. We got a gold pan and we've got a shovel. We're going to dig, flip over a rock, and we're going to pan it out and go, okay, that's cool. You punch down to bedrock and you go, okay, this creek is okay. We could probably pull an ounce a day out of here. It isn't good enough. And then they would move on, because they literally had to get about 1.5 ounces to 3 ounces a day in order really to survive, because of the cost of food and everything else. Perlot actually killed a lot of animals and deer, and there are a lot of bear and stuff back in the day too. And he would eat those birds galore. I think all he really ever had was a shotgun. But it's kind of funny. He killed a vulture and thought it was an eagle, tried to cook it, and even his dog wouldn't eat it. But it was kind of funny. So let's say that we go down to this creek, and it's a good one. So the creek is 10 feet wide. We get down into the bottom. We punch down. It's really good. Well, as we start punching down, where are you throwing your rock? Because you're throwing it out of the creek, right? So you make a mound along the side of the creek. And go back 10,000 years. Where was the level of that creek 10,000 years ago?
Where you made your pile of rocks?
You just buried virgin ground. Exactly. And the funny thing is, and I'll kind of make this long story a little bit short here, is we have a claim that's literally a mile from my shop. It's the closest claim actually to where all my load mining and all that kind of stuff is. I shot the video in there. We shot it out on Bull Creek, and I tried to tell these guys, I'm pretty confident that they buried this and it's virgin ground. Well, somebody, and that was 3 years ago, another A.M.R.A member about 2 weeks went into that claim where I shot the video, punched right into the bank, and it was orange juice, meaning old, concretized, old ground. Never been touched for 10,000 years. And he pulled 2 ounces of gold out of that one claim in about 5 days. And that's just using really small equipment. So it's a good example, is that, let's say that now it's 1981 and gold prices are shooting back up the roof, and James and I decide to go back to that same creek where you and I did back in 1851, and we come along, and are we going to move that tailing pile and investigate that, or are we going to go right back to the creek? Well, 99.99999% of the people go right back to the creek and try to dig out the crack that's been cleaned out 35 times over, without thinking about where the creek was way back in the day. Right. There's a really simple process, guys, that you can determine that, is go up onto these benches out of the creek, take a shovel, dig down about 1.5 feet. If you start seeing rounded river rock, kind of an indication that the creek was there,
Yep.
That's classic where we've been digging lately.
Yeah. The best placer deposit that I ever found, and I lost that claim due to being stupid. If you go to, like on our A.M.R.A trailer that we have, I have a picture of Lisa's hands holding about 3 ounces of giant nuggets. We found that in 1 day on this claim, and it's a dry placer bench out of a creek. I'm 200 yards from where the water is, and I'm 100 feet up in elevation out of the creek, and it was just a bench that I dug down. Didn't know it was poison oak I was digging in because it was December and I got it everywhere. But it's a good example, is that they were lazy back then too. They didn't have really good diets. They didn't have a whole lot of stamina and things like that, because they ate beans and bacon, and how much energy are you going to get out of that? So that's the thing, is there's a lot of videos that we have shot like that. Thinking Outside the Creek is one of them. It's on our YouTube page, and there's a hell of a lot of videos on there that explain what your rights are. So I encourage people to go out and watch those.
Yeah, everybody that's watching, definitely go over to their page, check what they got going on. It's phenomenal stuff. You know, I was blown away. I spent probably a good 2 hours when I should have been sleeping last night.
Well, some of those videos that we shot way back in the day, dude, we were using some really crappy software, and I know the music blares and it's really crappy, but the content is good. And obviously, over the years, we've gotten a lot better at that. And you know, making videos was never a part of my resume. Being a small mining activist wasn't on my resume either. It was really, we kind of did these things because we wanted to help people, and we formed A.M.R.A because we were pissed.
Right.
We still are.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, I think it's just about that time. Well, I appreciate you a lot coming on here on the first podcast there, Shannon. I really appreciate it. You know, as the first episode, you never know how it's going to go, but I think this episode it went as best as it was going to get, which is phenomenal. So I appreciate you having you on the show. And then James, you know, it's always good to see you, buddy. You know, we're always having a good time together. You know that. You know, friendships last a lifetime. So hopefully, Shannon, we can get you on another episode. We'd really appreciate it. You know, me personally, I'd love to hear from you. And, you know, all the comments that I've seen so far on the right side here, you know, everybody's enjoying the heck out of you know, your company and whatnot. So
good. Well, my pleasure. So when we get ready to do this walk, you know, so maybe in another couple of months we'll hop back on here and we'll talk about that. And it's really kind of premature to do it right now, but we'll do that. But just for everybody's benefit watching, what we're talking about is we're really kind of doing a unity walk for water rights. And me and another buddy who's one of our board members are going to walk all the way from Barstow, California, damn near to Sacramento. It's 450 miles. We did this 2 years ago. We walked 312 miles in 11 days, carrying an American flag in a backpack. And we're going to do it again this time. But the whole idea is to bring unity and get people off their ass and
unification.
The ranchers and the farmers and the off-roaders and all this kind of stuff. So we'll be doing that, but we'll jump back on before then. Which, by the way, I'm going to go actually pick up a treadmill tomorrow so I can. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure, and you know, I think that this is some friendships I'm really looking forward to. So
yeah, same here. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Coming on the show.
Have a great night, guys.
You guys both have a good evening, and for everybody watching, I'll see you guys on the next episode, which will be next Thursday at 6 p.m.